What's up, guys? In this video, I'm going to be talking about the usages of sub-oscillators in Massive X. Now, there are three ways to go about implementing a sub-oscillator, and each of those ways has its own kind of drawback. I'm going to be going through those, but they can be done, and you can get some really cool sounds. So a sub-oscillator is an oscillator that plays below the oscillator that you're playing. And what that does is that gives it a beefy sound. Might not be the best description, but that's just how I'm going to describe it. So let's start off by getting the blank preset in here. First way to use or implement a sub-oscillator is to just use oscillator 1, oscillator 2. We will feed those both into a filter, set that to the output, and then, we'll just blue monarch it. So a sub-oscillator is an oscillator that's 1 or 2 octaves below the note that you're playing. So we'll just go, negative 24. They're usually sine or square or triangle. We will do square, and this is what it sounds like. I'll just increase the volume as I play it. And what it does is it, beefs up the sound. Right? Very well understood, and it's used quite a bit. Drawback is that it takes up a precious, super awesome wavetable synth. But it can be done, and in most cases, that would be sufficient. Okay, another way to go about adding in a sub-oscillator is to use an insert, right? There is, an oscillation generator guy here. We can do pulse, however, no triangle, but we can adjust the pulse width and some things like that. And what this allows us to do is the mix will be essentially, when nothing's fed into it, a mix will just default as a volume amount. And then, we'll have that set to negative 24, which is 2 octaves. Right, so let's mix that in. Right, and that's all well and good. We can do stuff with the pulse width there to dial it in. But it takes up an insert slot, and that is, you only have 3. If you have some sub-oscillators going on, you'll take those up very quickly. Very puzzling that they would only allow 3, but it's not up to me. And I'm not the only one kind of concerned about this. Anyway, so if we don't want to do that, we can use a modulation source. Now this is this can work, and when you're dealing with sub-oscillators, yeah, it can work. We're going to use a modulator as a LFO. No, we're going to be using an LFO as an oscillator. Right, we'll go to switcher LFO. It's modulator 7. Right, and we'll just plop that into mod 1, and we'll go back to mod 7. So this LFO level will be the volume amount, kind of a placeholder. And we're not using the other wavetable, and we're not using this insert anymore. We're using this guy, and basically this is what it will do. Right, because it's very slow. It's low frequency. We need to set it so that it's pitch tracked. Right, we'll go to osc. Right, so let's tune this. How you do it is, you just move it all the way up. I'll show you how to do that. We'll do sine. Right, we need to bring the rate up. Right, and we can go, we'll do dual sine. Right, so we match them. Right, and then now we have the LFO as a sub-oscillator. This has a drawback. And this is something that I've expressed my concern about, but I should make you aware in the current version of Massive X is that these are not, this is not band limited like the other ones. This is an intended feature. In fact, Native Instruments released a video being like, hey, you can use these as, mod sources as audio. And that's all well and good, but they're not band limited. And I'll give you an example right here. Right? Sounds pretty gnarly. But, if we're working with lower frequencies, like, a sub oscillator, it's mitigated. So that's just one of those things. I'm sure they're going to fix it. People are saying, hey, it's not a big deal. LFOs aren't meant to be band limited. Well, when they're used in this way, they probably should be. But hey, I'm just probably living in a different world. Problem with this is it's difficult to kind of tune them. Like, say right now they're like pitch tracked, right? Accurately, to the fundamental here. Just give me an example, right? If I wanted to go down an octave, there's no visual readout. Right? Very, very tricky to do because you can't, there's no snapping, there's no way to kind of type in a value, right? Or even like a multiplier, which is puzzling to me. So what we have to do is we have to, essentially use the pitch here, and this will dictate kind of what we're doing. We can bring it down an octave with the global pitch. Right? And that works out pretty good. Right? And it only takes up a modulator, and we can adjust the level here. Right? And we can change up the different wave shapes here, depending on what we're going for. There's saws and stuff. Right? Just to give it, just adding attitude, essentially. Right? And what would actually make this a little bit usable, because this is probably the way that I would like to do it, because I'm only using up a modulator source, right? And, that's all well and good, but, the quality of this is kind of, suspect, but I don't want to be, one of those things. How you could also mitigate this would be to add, more inserts here, or I imagine Massive X, it's going to change. I predict, and this is how I would do it. I would have each of these kind of modules kind of replaceable. It'd be really cool if you could actually click on this, like you could click on this, and you could select, a 3 oscillator synth. You could even have like a legacy, like OG massive layout here with like the 3 with the original wavetables, things like that. Using, replacing noise with, oscillator, extra oscillators, sub oscillators, or even giving us more inserts, or giving us more modulation sources, and then having these properly implemented. Like, I don't want to get into it, but yeah, that's essentially how you can implement sub oscillators. Also, alternatively, maybe just having them within this unit here, right? Even if it's like a drop down, even if it's hidden, that would be ideal. And then, the routing, it would be a lot more kind of intuitive that way. I would love to see more mod sources like this, right? And we can do some really interesting things, because like a lot of these shapes are pretty cool, like different saws, curved saws, things like that. Maybe even you know, drawing your own. Who knows? Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that video. I hope you learned stuff. Take care and have a good one.